I've never posted on here since I never had a reason, but here I am. Late last night, I was browsing for jobs on Indeed and found this auto detailing job. I applied and didn't think anything of it. Just about 30 minutes ago, I received a call from an unknown number and I answered it. This was the guy from the auto detailing place. The call started off normal. I didn't think anything of it. But I noticed how he just kept talking and talking. And usually when somebody wants to give you an interview for a position, they get straight to the point. He began to tell me about the things they do on a regular day of work. He said they were these so-called vans that they would ride to the client's house to detail their car. And keep this in mind. He started to ask me questions such as, "Are you in school?" Which I replied to him, "I'm not. I graduated high school a couple years ago and have been looking into college, but I'm not sure about it." He started asking me questions that made me uncomfortable. He asked where my parents worked, and the second that I said my dad works for the government, I could feel the awkwardness in his voice. Straight then, I knew something was up. He was saying that he almost feels bad for me because I'm 19, living with my parents because they have good jobs, and I haven't had the chance to flourish. That started to piss me off. I was just on the phone with him at this point to see what kind of scamming job this was. Finally, he asked me if I wanted to come in for an interview. Again, just doing this to see what he was up to, not actually going. I said yes and eventually asked what the address to the place was. This is where things get messed up. He said, "Well, today you won't have to meet us at the office." So obviously I asked him where I was supposed to meet him for this interview. He said, "I want to show you around the van today and meet the manager." Hold up. You want me to have an interview at an unspecified location in a van? He told me to meet the manager at some random McDonald's, and that there would be a white van with auto detailing written on the truck. Doesn't sound sketchy at all. I told him that I would meet his manager there, obviously not going to, and he wished me good luck. I don't know what kind of shady stuff he was pulling, but I am super uncomfortable. Even in the interview he said, "I know it sounds sketchy, but it's not." Obviously, like I said, I didn't end up actually going. But I really hope that nobody else fell for this scammy job posting. I've had my fair share of creepy people throughout my life. Bucharest is a city where things like this rarely happened, so just take it from me. I had bad luck. First of all, let me just say that I'm not your average scaredy cat dude who likes it when someone stares at them for too long, like I've seen some posters here do. I'm also not going to hide under my bed if my house gets broken into. You better believe I'll stomp their butts with no regards for my own safety. And putting being a keyboard warrior aside, there have been a few moments that I've had with total strangers that have been scarring, genuinely terrifying moments. I'm going to be talking about the most messed up situation that I have ever been in my life, and hope to any god out there that it never happens again. The incident happened 4 years ago before New Year's Eve. I was 18 at the time, and I had finished high school in the summer and with no activity, and nothing else to do. I decided to look for something I could do part-time with my limited skill sets and talents. The only things that I was remotely good at was playing video games and boxing. My mom found out this casting job in a newspaper article, back when she didn't know how to browse the internet, and she called and set up a meeting without really talking to me about it. I decided to play along since I was searching for something anyway, and casting in some shows seemed like an awesome choice. I'm 6'1" and I was skinny at the time, so I figured they could make me wear stuff like a clothing model. Needless to say, my naivety got the best of me, and I didn't realize things did not work that way. I went to the casting studio and the place was a total wreck. It was in some rundown building at the edge of the city. No windows, the bricks in the wall were cracked, and the withering vegetation was getting a hold of the place. It was also strange that there were no people around, but I figured this is the city's edge and all, then it should be a normal sight. I realized that there was no front door, so I went down some stairway on the far end of the building, which led me to a rotted wooden door. There was no handle or anything, so I didn't even know if I should push or try to pull it with the tip of my finger somehow. I decided that it must be the wrong place, so I called the number which my mom provided me with, and somebody answered. It was, well, she said that she was a woman, but I thought she was a man at first. She had a very low-pitched voice. She was very sweet and patient with me, and told me that this is indeed the building that I should go into. That I should try to hold the door and push it up a bit, and then pull it towards me slowly so it wouldn't break from the hinges. And not to be afraid when I come inside because it's going to be pitch black. Apparently there's no electricity in that area, so I would just need to go forward until I feel another door. And that'll take me to another hallway which is completely lit up and take me to their office. Now hold up. What kind of insane person do you think I am to do this? I watched way too many horror movies to know this is all kinds of bad. The lady on the other side gave me a brief explanation on why the office was like this. Apparently, this was an apartment complex built in the 60s, but it got really wrecked after the '77 earthquake, which killed quite a few people because some of the pillars on the second floor were unstable beforehand. So they had to close it and no one's really done anything with it since. Since this casting company's budget was really low, they couldn't afford to have a nice looking office and to be in a good looking place, or at least a safe one. If you're having trouble with logic here, they were her words and not mine. One thing that I found sketchy is that somewhere in this conversation, she said, "You're alone, yeah?" I thought it was a bit strange, as if she could see me somehow. Her story seemed legit though. I closed the call, opened the rotting door, and sure enough, darkness. I should point out that when I pulled the door to me, there was a chair in front of it, probably to block it from collapsing inward as it apparently swung both ways because of its state of decay. I activated my phone flashlight to look around and it was really empty. Just a few chairs in the corner, and a white ragged and dirty looking tarp on the ground next to them. The door in the front had the same aspect of rotting wood. I figured that they would at least renovate that one to make it look more appealing. I pushed the door gently and it opens with a very loud creak. I think I should have pulled it. But this one didn't have a handle as well. Everything was still dark. I started questioning the system that they use and the fact that they're not professional. The lady told me that this hallway would be lit up, yet it wasn't. With my phone flashlight still on, I scanned the room for clues as to where the office might be. I know how this must seem to you listening to this. How did I not pick up on this incredibly sketchy situation? I'm just used to this. In the past, me and my parents didn't have light sources in our backyard, so whenever I needed to get something from the pantry, which also did not have a light source, I would do so in total darkness. This whole thing was getting on my nerves, so I deactivated my flashlight and decided to call the phone number again. As soon as I put my phone on my ear and the light it emitted went out, I heard a loud creak behind me, the sound of the rotting door that I pushed out earlier getting put back into place. I jumped at the sound and let out a sharp yell. I instinctively put my phone out, but the light the dial screen was letting out was too weak to see in front of me. "Hello?" I asked in a worried voice. No response. But in a second, I could hear the dial tone from my phone and hear a Nokia ringtone, the piano one, from the other side of the room where the door had been closed. I stay silent for a moment and the ringing stops. I have never been more horrified in my life. I crouched down and started moving along the wall to my left, as quickly and quietly as possible. I hear very quiet footsteps coming from my right, but I couldn't tell if they were coming toward me. I formulated a very basic escape plan in an instant. I had a general idea of where the door was, and the footsteps seemed to be directionless. I took 2 coins of 50 bani out of my back pocket and threw them at the other side of the room, and then I booked it. I pushed on the edge of the door at first because I ran away way too fast and had no idea where the door was exactly, and then I pushed against it to get out of the room. I tripped because I expected no resistance, yet a chair was blocking the other side. I heard scampered footsteps behind me and slight grunts. I get up and run away in the dark room with no regards to what I may hit on my path. I just knew the exit would be right in front of me. Sure enough, I hit another chair on the way, the one that I found blocking the door at the entrance, and it propelled me so hard that I bashed the door and knocked it off its hinges. I opened my eyes and I was outside, so my first instinct was screaming for help at the top of my lungs. I looked at the building and finally see him. A tall, overweight man, probably around 300 pounds, carrying a cloth in one of his hands. He was wearing a white tank top and jeans or sweatpants. I really couldn't be bothered to notice at the time. The expression on his face was one of pure anger. I scampered about and ran up the stairs as quickly as I could, and then turned right to go into town. I ran for about 3 or 4 minutes at full speed, not stopping for anything, until I finally reached the main street and I saw a lot of cars again. I was still in a panic state, so I beelined it for the nearest taxi and told him to take me the heck home. I called my mom when I was halfway home and told her everything that just happened. She felt sick to her stomach and started crying that she put me in a situation that I might have died. Later that day, I filed a report to our nearest police station and they sent a dispatch there. We were informed that they found traces of a few blunts which had cannabis sativa and a double-edged razor on the ground. They also found a broken Nokia flip phone in the dirt outside. My parents told the police that if they found out anything else, to please contact them. This has left me with some serious issues, as I know I feel very anxious whenever I go to a job interview. I only feel relatively safe if the location is in a very public place, and the interview is at rush hour. One man did this to me. So kids, stay safe and remember, your martial arts training doesn't mean crap when you're scared out of your mind. I applied on a job website recently for a serving position at a restaurant. I was contacted by someone through the messaging option through the site. The place was a Burmese restaurant. I ended up Googling the address and found out where it was. The next day, the person messaging me told me an address that didn't show up on Google. I thought it was odd, but oh well. Today, the interview was at 9 a.m. The restaurant being open this early was surprising to me. I used Google Maps and to find the location. I am always early, and I'm glad that I was. The location was not even open for business. The paper on the door said the restaurant is opening in April, and it had a completely different name than the ad had stated. I looked inside and the building looked abandoned and very dilapidated. Okay, pretty weird. I stand off to the side to scope things out because I'm having a very bad feeling that this may be some setup trap to lure a person or a girl like me into a place for an attack. And then I notice a man who looks to be high on a stimulant, wearing nice clothing, watching me. He smiles and laughs and then does this bird whistle and goes to the side of the restaurant. A few minutes later, a man in an Audi SUV shows up, looks at me, starts laughing and meets up with the first guy. They are both around the side, and I start wondering if there is a door to get in that way that I didn't know about. I start hearing the men bird whistling, and to my terror, I hear multiple other bird whistles coming from all around the block. However, I see no one. How many people are out there? Why are they hiding in the bushes? I get freaked out. I was going to tell the interviewer to do the interview outside because if I get locked in there, I know that I'm stuck. I ended up trusting my intuition and getting the heck out of there. Nothing bad happened, luckily, because I decided to trust my gut. I feel like society tries to get women to think they're being paranoid in this kind of situation. Then, if something horrible happens, people say, "Gee, she should have been more careful. What was she thinking?" I just wanted to share. I am unsure what to do because nothing happened. I don't really know how to approach this without any technical evidence. I want to contact the job site or police to look into it, but I feel like they won't care. Let me know if you guys have any other ideas. This happened to me in 2016, but I was having trouble sleeping tonight, and my brain dredged this up from my memories. I had recently moved back to my college town so I could rent an apartment with a friend after a long-term relationship had ended. I was doing a lot of job hunting for pretty much anything, as I was pretty desperate for income and unsuccessful with finding work within my career field. I was using multiple job sites, but mostly Indeed, because I liked their website features that helped you track which jobs you applied for and their status. There were, of course, some jobs that I applied for on their own websites, but I kept track. After a couple of weeks of searching, I get a call. I don't recognize the number and the area code wasn't familiar, but I pick it up as it might be a job prospect. A woman is on the end and she says that she's calling to set up an interview as I had applied for their company. The company's name was not something that I remembered applying for. While on the phone with her, I quickly pulled up Indeed on my laptop and looked through all of the jobs that I had applied for. None matched. I have no idea what this job is, but don't make this apparent on the phone, as I've been job searching for weeks and I'm still unemployed. I ask her for the address of the building and I write it down. Looking back, I can't remember the name that she gave me, but what I do remember was how pushy she was into scheduling the interview for later that evening. I agree to the interview, and I thank her, but as I hang up, I get a very bad feeling. Something doesn't seem right, so I Google the phone number, and it's not linked to a company. I Google the address, and it's also not affiliated with a company. It's from way outside the distance of jobs that I was applying for, almost an hour away from where I live. I pull up Google Street View, and all I can see for the address that she gave me is several smaller rundown buildings with a highway exit in the distance. It looked desolate. I pictured myself driving there around dusk when she scheduled the interview, and I could physically feel this sensation of dread settle in me. I didn't want to go. I brought all of this up to my roomie at the time, and he said that I might be overthinking it, but if I wasn't comfortable with it, to not go. I'm so glad that I didn't go. The more time passes, the more I'm aware of just how shady it was. In hindsight, I wish that I had gone to the police, but I didn't at the time because the year prior, I hadn't had much faith in them. I had tried to get a restraining order for an ex who was telling me that he was going to hurt me, and he was harassing me from burner phone numbers. Who knows what could have happened if I had gone. It's a scary thought, really.